Have you ever noticed that some people seem to move through life as if opportunities are constantly finding them, while others feel as though they are always chasing, always striving, always waiting for something to finally work out? Why does one person experience meaningful coincidences, powerful connections, and unexpected breakthroughs, while another repeats the same struggles year after year, despite effort, intelligence, and good intentions? This is not about luck, and it is not about chance. What you are witnessing is the result of a very specific internal state. The moment you begin to understand this, your relationship with reality starts to change. Because the truth is, your life is not happening to you. Your life is responding to you. Right now, as you listen to these words, your brain is processing information, your nervous system is regulating signals, and your body is producing chemicals that directly influence how you perceive the world. And that perception, more than any external circumstance, is shaping the opportunities you are able to see. The fact that you are here, listening to this message, suggests something important. It suggests that your brain is no longer satisfied with the familiar. And when the brain becomes curious, when it begins to question its own patterns, change becomes biologically possible. The real question is not whether opportunity exists. The real question is whether your internal state allows you to perceive it. Most people spend their lives believing that something outside of them must change before their life can improve. They wait for more money, better relationships, clearer circumstances, or external validation before they allow themselves to feel safe, confident, or fulfilled. But neuroscience shows us something very different. Your emotional state comes first. Your perception follows. And your perception determines your experience of reality. If you are constantly living in stress, worry, frustration, or anticipation of problems, your body is sending a powerful signal to the brain that you are in danger. And when the brain perceives danger, whether real or imagined, it shifts into survival mode. In survival, the brain becomes narrow. It becomes rigid. It becomes predictable. And a predictable brain cannot perceive new possibilities. This is why opportunity often feels invisible. Not because it is absent, but because the brain is too busy protecting itself to notice anything unfamiliar. Let's explore this more deeply. The brain is a prediction machine. It is designed to use past experiences to anticipate the future. If you have spent years thinking the same thoughts, feeling the same emotions, and reacting in the same ways, your brain becomes extremely efficient at recreating the same internal state. Over time, those thoughts and emotions become automatic. They no longer feel like choices. They feel like who you are. And when your identity becomes anchored to familiar emotional patterns, stress, struggle, lack, disappointment, your brain filters reality to match that identity. This is not philosophy. This is biology. Every second, your brain receives millions of bits of information from the environment. But you only become consciously aware of a very small fraction of that information. What determines what gets through is your internal state. If you are emotionally conditioned to expect problems, your brain will search for problems. If you are conditioned to expect rejection, your brain will notice rejection. If you are conditioned to expect struggle, your brain will interpret neutral events as obstacles. This filtering system is not neutral. It is shaped by emotion. And emotion is the language of the body. When the body is repeatedly exposed to the same emotional state, it begins to crave it. This is why people can become addicted to stress, even when they say they want peace. The body becomes chemically dependent on familiar emotions, because those emotions create predictable internal conditions. So even when new opportunities appear, the body resists them. Not consciously, but biologically. Because the unknown feels unsafe. And opportunity lives in the unknown. This is why change feels uncomfortable. This is why growth feels uncertain. This is why people often sabotage moments that could transform their lives. The body is saying, "This doesn't feel familiar. Go back to what we know." And what the body knows is the past. So most people live their entire lives reliving the past while hoping for a different future. But the future does not change until the internal state changes. This is where intention and awareness become essential. When you begin to observe your thoughts instead of being consumed by them, something powerful happens. You interrupt the automatic cycle. You begin to step out of unconscious patterns and into conscious creation. Awareness is the first step out of survival. The moment you notice how often your mind anticipates problems, rehearses worst-case scenarios, or replays past failures, you are no longer completely identified with those thoughts. You are observing them. And the observer is not the same as the program. This distinction changes everything. When you remain unconscious, your thoughts drive your emotions drive your behavior, and your behavior reinforces your identity. This loop keeps you trapped in the same outcomes. But when you become conscious, you introduce choice. And choice is the doorway to change. Now, let's talk about coherence. When your heart and brain are incoherent, when your thoughts say one thing and your emotions say another, the body experiences internal conflict. This incoherence keeps the nervous system in a heightened state of alert, constantly scanning for danger. But when your thoughts and emotions begin to align, when you intentionally generate elevated emotional states like gratitude, appreciation, or curiosity, the body receives a very different signal. It receives the signal that it is safe. And when the body feels safe, the brain becomes flexible. A flexible brain is capable of learning. A flexible brain is capable of change. A flexible brain is capable of perceiving opportunity. This is why emotional states matter more than circumstances. You can be in the same environment, with the same people, the same resources, and experience completely different outcomes depending on your internal state. When you are coherent, your perception expands. You notice details you would have missed before. You interpret events differently. You respond instead of react. And this is when what people call luck begins to appear. But luck is not random. It is the natural result of coherence. When your internal state becomes ordered, your perception becomes refined. And when perception becomes refined, you begin to detect subtle cues, patterns, and possibilities that were always present but never registered. This is what Carl Jung referred to as synchronicity. But synchronicity is not mystical, it is perceptual. It is the moment when your internal state aligns with information in the external environment. You hear the right sentence at the right time. You meet the right person unexpectedly. You feel a calm impulse to act, without force or fear. From the outside, it looks like coincidence. From the inside, it feels inevitable. This is not because the universe suddenly favors you. It is because you are finally available. When you stop living in anticipation of problems, you stop signaling danger to your nervous system. And when the nervous system is no longer locked in survival, the brain no longer predicts the past. It opens to the unknown. And the unknown is where all new outcomes exist. This is why elevated emotions are not optional. They are instructional. Gratitude, for example, tells the body that something positive has already happened. And when the body believes that, it stops searching for threats. It begins to search for confirmation. And what you search for, you find. So the practice is not about forcing positive thoughts. It is about rehearsing new emotional states until the body accepts them as real. When you repeatedly generate elevated emotions without an external reason, you are training your body to experience a future state now. And the moment the body believes the future emotionally, perception reorganizes. You begin to see options you didn't see before. You make different choices. You take different actions. And those actions lead to different results. Not because the world changed, but because you did. When you begin to understand this process, you stop asking why certain things never seem to work out, and you start asking a much more powerful question. Who am I being, biologically and emotionally, while I am trying to create change? Because creation does not respond to effort alone. It responds to state. Most people attempt to change their lives while remaining in the same internal condition. They try to create a new future from the same personality, the same emotional reactions, and the same self-image that produced the old one. And that is why nothing truly changes. The body has been conditioned to the past. And the body does not trust unfamiliar futures. So even when a new possibility appears, the nervous system reacts with uncertainty. The heart rate changes. The breath becomes shallow. The mind looks for reasons to hesitate. This is not intuition, it is conditioning. True intuition is calm. Conditioning is urgent. Learning to recognize the difference is essential. When you are operating from survival, every decision feels heavy. You second-guess yourself. You search for certainty. You wait for guarantees. But guarantees belong to the known, and the known is always the past. The future requires trust in the unknown. And trust only emerges when the body is no longer living in fear. This is why meditation is not about escaping reality. It is about retraining the body to feel safe without external validation. When you sit in stillness and become aware of your thoughts, you are interrupting the habitual signals that keep the nervous system activated. Each time you notice a familiar thought pattern and choose not to follow it, you weaken the neural circuits connected to the past. And neurons that no longer fire together begin to disconnect. At the same time, when you intentionally generate an elevated emotional state, gratitude, appreciation, awe, you are creating new chemical signals in the body. You are teaching the body how it feels to live in a future that has not yet happened. This is the biological foundation of change. Your body becomes the unconscious mind, and the unconscious mind believes what it feels. So when the body begins to feel worthy, safe, inspired, or open, without external proof, it starts to accept those states as normal. And what becomes normal becomes automatic. This is how identity changes. Identity is not defined by your goals. It is defined by your emotional baseline. If your baseline emotional state is stress, your identity is someone who struggles. If your baseline is lack, your identity is someone who searches. If your baseline is gratitude, your identity is someone who expects. And expectation shapes perception. When expectation changes, attention follows. And where attention goes, energy flows. This is not metaphorical. This is measurable. Brain scans show that when individuals move into coherent emotional states, activity in the frontal lobes increases. These are the regions associated with creativity, insight, and awareness of possibility. At the same time, activity in survival-based circuits decreases. The brain literally reorganizes itself based on emotion. This means that opportunity is not something you chase. It is something you become capable of noticing. Once you are no longer emotionally rehearsing the past, your brain stops predicting it. And when the brain stops predicting the past, it becomes open to something new. This openness is what most people describe as flow. In flow, action feels effortless. Decisions feel clear. Timing feels precise. But flow is not accidental. It is the result of internal coherence. When your heart rhythm becomes coherent, it sends a powerful signal to the brain. That signal organizes neural activity, improves communication between brain regions, and creates a state of calm alertness. In this state, you are not forcing outcomes. You are responding intelligently to what appears. And this responsiveness is what allows opportunity to unfold naturally. Think about the times in your life when things seem to fall into place. You were likely not anxious. You were not overthinking. You were present, open, and engaged. Presence is power. When you are fully present, your perception sharpens. You notice subtle changes in tone, body language, timing, and context. These details guide your decisions in ways that logic alone cannot. This is why intuition emerges when the mind is quiet. Not because information appears from nowhere, but because noise disappears. And when noise disappears, clarity remains. The more you practice entering this state, the more familiar it becomes. And the more familiar it becomes, the more your body trusts it. Eventually, coherence becomes your default. At that point, you no longer react to life. You participate in it. And participation is what transforms coincidence into synchronicity. Synchronicity is not something you wait for. It is something you align with. When your internal state is ordered, meaningful patterns become visible. Events that once felt random now appear connected. Decisions feel supported rather than forced. This is not because reality changed. It is because your lens did. Most people miss these moments because they are too distracted by internal noise. They are rehearsing conversations that haven't happened, reliving mistakes that cannot be changed, or worrying about outcomes that do not exist yet. This constant mental rehearsal keeps the body in the past or future, never in the present. And creation only happens in the present. The present moment is where the past releases its grip. The present moment is where new information enters awareness. The present moment is where perception expands. When you learn to anchor your attention in the present while maintaining an elevated emotional state, you create the ideal internal conditions for change. In this state, you are no longer seeking opportunity. You are receptive to it. Receptivity is different from desire. Desire implies lack. Receptivity implies readiness. When you are receptive, you are not trying to make something happen. You are allowing yourself to notice what is already unfolding. This is why forcing outcomes often backfires. Force signals insecurity. Allowing signals trust. And trust calms the nervous system. As your nervous system calms, your perception broadens. And as perception broadens, new possibilities appear. This is how the internal becomes external. Not instantly, not magically, but predictably. Each time you choose coherence over reaction, you reinforce new neural pathways. Each time you respond from awareness instead of fear, you condition your body to a new identity. And over time, that identity produces a different life. You begin to attract different conversations. You enter different environments. You make different choices without forcing them. And from the outside, it looks like luck. But from the inside, it feels earned because you did the internal work. The work of observing. The work of regulating emotion. The work of becoming conscious. This is why personal transformation is not about becoming someone else. It is about releasing who you are no longer. When the past identity dissolves, the future has space to emerge. As you remain in this state more consistently, something subtle but profound begins to happen. Your relationship with uncertainty changes. What once felt threatening now feels neutral. What once triggered anxiety now invites curiosity. This is not because the world has become safer, but because your nervous system has learned how to regulate itself without external reassurance. And this is the foundation of personal power. When your body no longer depends on conditions to feel whole, you stop negotiating with reality. You stop asking, "When will it happen?" and begin living as if alignment is already in motion. This shift alone collapses enormous resistance. Because resistance is emotional memory. Every time you react with frustration, impatience, or fear, you are signaling to the body that the past is still in control. And the body responds by keeping you anchored to what is familiar. But when you respond with presence, even in the face of uncertainty, you send a very different signal. You are telling the body, "We are safe enough to explore. We do not need to predict everything. We can remain open." That signal changes everything. This is where the concept of the quantum field becomes relevant, not as mysticism, but as possibility. The field represents all potential outcomes that have not yet collapsed into experience. And what determines which possibility becomes real is not wishful thinking, but coherence. When your thoughts are clear and your emotions are elevated, you are no longer broadcasting mixed signals. You are no longer wanting one thing while feeling another. Your mind and body are speaking the same language. This is alignment. And alignment is what allows intention to carry information. Most people set intentions from a state of lack. They want something because they do not feel complete. But that emotional signal contradicts the intention itself. The body is saying, "I don't have," while the mind is saying, "I want." The field responds to coherence, not desire. When you feel the emotion of the future before it happens, the body accepts that future as real. And when the body believes, perception reorganizes to match that belief. You begin to notice opportunities that are consistent with the emotional state you are maintaining. This is why rehearsing the future emotionally is so powerful. You are not visualizing to make something happen. You are conditioning your nervous system to accept a new reality. And once the body is conditioned, behavior changes naturally. You speak differently. You listen differently. You move differently through the world. These differences are subtle, but their impact is cumulative. A calm response leads to a different conversation. A different conversation leads to a different relationship. A different relationship opens a door that never existed before. This is how the extraordinary emerges from the ordinary. Not through dramatic effort, but through sustained coherence. And this is why patience becomes essential. Not passive patience, but embodied trust. Trust that as long as you remain aligned internally, the external will reorganize in ways you could not predict. Prediction belongs to the past. Creation belongs to the present. When you stop trying to control how things should happen, you free energy that was locked in anticipation. That energy becomes available for perception, intuition, and inspired action. Inspired action feels different from force. Force is urgent. Inspired action is calm. Force is reactive. Inspired action is responsive. Force seeks immediate validation. Inspired action unfolds naturally. When you act from this state, timing becomes precise. You do not rush, and you do not hesitate. You simply move when the signal is clear. And clarity only comes when the mind is quiet enough to hear it. This is why silence is so important. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of internal resistance. In silence, the body resets. The brain synchronizes. The heart regulates. And when these systems are in harmony, perception becomes refined. You begin to sense when to speak and when to wait. You feel when to engage and when to withdraw. You recognize when an opportunity aligns and when it does not. This discernment protects you from distraction. Because not every opportunity is meant for you. But the right ones feel unmistakable. They do not create anxiety. They create resonance. Resonance feels like recognition, not excitement. It feels grounded, not frantic. And when you learn to trust this feeling, decision-making becomes effortless. This is how confidence is built, not through affirmation, but through coherence. Confidence is the result of trusting your internal signals. And internal signals become reliable when they are no longer distorted by fear. As this trust deepens, you stop outsourcing your power. You stop waiting for permission. You stop measuring yourself against others. Comparison dissolves when clarity is present. You no longer ask why others seem lucky. You no longer wonder what you are missing. You are too engaged with what is unfolding in front of you. And this engagement is magnetic. People respond to presence. Opportunities respond to clarity. Life responds to coherence. This is not something you achieve once and lose forever. It is a practice, a daily choice to return to awareness instead of habit, to choose regulation instead of reaction, to choose coherence instead of chaos. Some days will be easier than others. That is not failure. That is biology. Each time you notice that you have drifted and choose to return, you strengthen the neural circuits of awareness. And what you practice becomes who you are. Eventually, the state you once had to work for becomes effortless. Presence becomes familiar. Clarity becomes natural. And opportunity becomes frequent. Not because life became easier, but because you became more available. This is the real meaning of transformation. It is not about fixing yourself. It is about remembering how to be regulated, aware, and open. When you live from this state, you stop asking for signs. You become the signal. And the world responds accordingly. So as this video comes to a close, understand this clearly. Nothing you heard today requires belief. It requires application. The information only becomes real when it is lived. The next hour matters. The next interaction matters. The next choice matters. Not because it is big, but because it is made from a different state. You are not here by accident. And this moment is not random. Something in you was ready to receive this perspective because something in you is ready to change. Do not rush away from that readiness. Protect it. Return to it. Practice it. Luck is not something that arrives someday. It is something that becomes visible when you stop blocking it. And now you know exactly how that works. Stay present. Stay coherent. Stay open. And watch what unfolds when you do.